Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with Mark Ostrander and Grant Turner. We are weighing in, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Boys, I am back. I landed about midnight last night. Didn't get my bags. I'm 1:30, running a little low, but we're talking wrestling. We're talking Bedlam. We're talking Portal. First of all, how's everybody doing?
Great, boss.
Marco?
Good. Gotta go watch Grandview practice yesterday. If I was still coaching, David, I'd go to Grandview and just recruit their backup kids because they had 4 25-pounders that looked like they could win NAIA this year. So that's pretty sad when all 4 of the guys could win it. So nice problem to have.
Shout out to Grandview and how good they are, but there's some other good schools. I mean, we were down, GT and I were at that Life University Open. There's some kids that can scrap from these other schools. So, but yeah, we saw, I called the Grandview match a couple of weeks ago. We talked about it. Those guys are, you got a deep squad, GT. I know you guys are pushing and have extra motivation after last year. I was actually texting with Nick Mitchell, the head coach there. We were just talking about the fact that when you're upset about second place, you're doing something right. So that's a good thing. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's talk about Bedlam first. Okay, I'm going to stop the share screen. So, Bedlam, Oklahoma State wins 9 matches to 1. I actually had Chris Perry on, the podcast is up, and he said that Oklahoma wanted to start at 49 because they thought they could win the Demas match. Demas moved up because Mitch Moore is in concussion protocol. And by the way, we missed it last week. That's my fault. Mitch Moore was beating Jaden Abbas by like 9 points and got a concussion. We just looked at the result, which is Jaden Abbas advanced, but potentially that's really good news for Oklahoma. Demas goes 49. G. Feller pulls away late. Wyatt Sheets wins an overtime match at 57, and Oklahoma State is off and running. So they end up winning 9 matches. The only match they lose is at heavyweight in overtime on a neutral danger situation. And then it got testy afterwards. So I know, Mark, you watched it. What were your thoughts on the match and afterwards?
I thought Oklahoma, a few of their kids just quit wrestling, obviously. That's not good for the head coaching staff or the assistants. You don't want to see your athletes quit wrestling, obviously. The aftermath, I guess there's some blood there, some old blood that this heavyweight from Oklahoma smacked AJ's brother once at a tournament while he was getting ready to wrestle, hit him in the back of the head. They showed it on Flow this morning, so I got to see that live. And so I think that happened.
It wasn't live, but you saw it.
No, I saw it,
Yeah. I'm just
it was
making
a replay, but
it didn't just happen. It happened.
No, it happened a while ago. So I think AJ took a little offense to that, and I think he got shoved, and he decided to show the heavyweight from Oklahoma he's got a pretty good double, and he used it. So
yeah. So GT, you're still coaching, right? And sometimes I think these handshakes afterwards, sometimes I'm not sure they're worth the trouble. We saw it at Iowa State. Now we saw it at Oklahoma State. You and I will both be, all 3 of us will be at Iowa Penn State. I know GT and I will be at Iowa Oklahoma State. Sometimes they go good, but I mean, and by the way, Joe Smith is the hero we all need, breaking everything up. So shout out to Joe. You as a coach, Grant, still in the middle of it, do you think these are a good idea? Do you think maybe when it gets testy, they should just, kind of give the head nod and everybody go to their own locker room? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know in Iowa high school wrestling, it is now like you get deducted a team point if you go over and coach or shake the coach's hand after the match.
Yes.
So in international wrestling, you're encouraged to go shake the other coach's hand and the referee's
and the
hand.
officials, all 3, yeah.
Like on all 3 sides, right? So, I mean, I don't have an issue with, shaking hands afterwards. I mean, it is something that we've been doing since like youth sports. Now once again, like things could happen, but yeah. I mean, if they want to go try to fight each other, they can go fight each other. Like it's going to happen regardless. So like shaking hands after a duel, I don't have a huge problem with. Does it like reduce the amount of like close contact that they may have? Probably, but
yeah, people are going to find each other in the locker room.
People will find each other. People will fight for no reason, or they'll fight for a reason, whatever they want to be able to do. If they're upset, that's fine.
Chris Perry had a good take on it. He's like, I'm glad nobody threw punches. We wouldn't want to have to, literally have to discipline, punish people, hold people out of meets, stuff like that. So that was, I thought that was a good take. So we'll get into the upsets for the week. Honestly, there wasn't a ton of upsets. So Flo does a nice job of doing this every week. We'll just go by weight classes. So, 25, 21 beat 20, 23. Carter beat Tremblay, but I'm not sure if Tremblay or Arini are even starting. I'll jump to you guys when there's something worth talking about. Nolan beats Rooks. D'Amelio beats Cole Matthews, but D'Amelio has good wins. I mean, maybe he deserved to be in the honorable mentions, which for those guys is 26-33, and that's actually kind of an interesting way to do it. You don't have to sort all that out, Mark. That's what we should have done. Saved ourselves a lot of time. G beats Demas, but again, I think Demas has to go back down. The big one, we'll come back to it. Karchla beats Wenzel, and there's just not a lot else here. So we're not going to go through the rankings because 90% of the rankings stayed exactly the same. There are just some minor tweaks. So Mark, well, I'll start with you, GT. Wenzel's a returning finalist, gets beat, and he gets beat 2 takedowns to none. Wenzel's really good on top. Karchla still struggles on bottom a little bit, but didn't pick down. It's just the 2 escapes, or 3 escapes essentially, So what do you see as the ceiling for Karchla? And does this change how you feel about Wenzel maybe getting back to the finals, or did you not think he would get back?
Well, I think, to Mark's been a big Karchla guy for a while and like kind of brought his name to my attention, a lot more over the past, 5 to 6 months. I think, getting a good win over Wenzel, who's, pretty battle-tested wrestler. I mean, that's a great win for him. It's a great mid-season win, but, I think Wenzel is, I don't know if he's as good to get back to the finals now, including all the other guys that have migrated to this weight class. But, yeah, I think that this is a great mid-season win for him. Now, Karchla's got a lot of work to do in order to maybe get a little bit higher into the rankings, because the solidified top 4 there are pretty legit, pretty salty guys. So, could actually work out better for Wenzel if he ends up getting like a 6 or, maybe even like a 7 seed, put him on the bottom, maybe. Who knows?
What we know is this: if Marinelli is the 1 seed, the next best guy will be the 8 seed, because that's what seems to happen every year. Right. So, Mark, your team Karchla, and ever since that RTC Cup when he beat Mackay, and Karchla's had a really tough early season. Not like he hasn't done well, but he goes from Cliff Keen to right into this, where other guys went from Cliff Keen and didn't have as tough of a match in this duel. You're the captain of Team Karchla. Tell me what you think.
I think he's just really good on his feet. Now, both of his takedowns, David, were on the new rule that they came out with, which was danger position. So he never really completely finished them. There he was given the 2 because he had him exposed and kind of held him there. It was kind of more of a scramble situation. Both of them were kind of on the edge of the mat. So I don't think Wenzel's out of this yet. And I still think Karchla is going to have to learn how to ride and get out a little bit. I think that's going to be the difference. But for a freshman, I think he's really, really good. And I think in a couple of years, he's going to be the guy to beat without a doubt.
I won't name this person because this coach is from not Ohio State, but one of the guys I respect the most in Division I, when Karchla was a high school junior, said he had the best positioning he had seen out of a high school junior in the last 10 years. So for me, that's when I first started paying attention to him. But you guys know this is mainly a college and an international podcast. Like we love talking about Iron Man, but we don't know it as well as the Willie Sailors of the world. We don't pretend to. Nice cup, by the way, Ostrander. Well done there with the mug.
Thanks, Grant.
So, so yeah, I think he's, and the thing is, Carcel will get a shot at Marinelli. I mean, they're going to duel. So, he's got a chance to move way up, but it's definitely good things for Ohio State. They seem to be continuing to improve. So we talked about Bedlam. We talked about Carcel. Moses Schwartz is going in the portal. He would be a really good rental for somebody for this season. The problem is everybody's got this money stacked up. If we go look at the rankings and we can see where he is. Schwartz at 25 or 33 rather. So he's 21st right now. Only two sources have him ranked. But I mean, that's a guy that can score you a couple points in nationals. He wrestled really well at the Big 12s last year, we called him. But the main news about roster, Logan Massa, U.S. Open champion, multiple-time All-American, has said he's coming back. Mark, you and I talked about it off air. I'm like, we're not talking about it until it's official. I've known Logan forever. His dad actually wrestled for my dad. So Roger, Taylor, Logan, all those guys. Roger's the father. So shout out to Roger, one of the really good people in wrestling. Ran and probably still runs one of the most successful like sort of clubs out of his garage, kind of like the barn out there at Don Bosco with Mr. Valencia. So let's go to the team scores. And Mark, you did a great job of putting these together. We appreciate it. So right now, Michigan is at 69, and this is with a couple of those people, including Suriano and one of them not. But if you put Logan Massa in here, this doesn't really get him on tier 1, but it might put them on their own at tier 2. Is GT, is that kind of how you see it? Logan Massa is a guy come in, score anywhere from maybe 6 to 12 points, and maybe it's not even a difference. It's just margin for error if somebody else doesn't wrestle to their seed.
Yeah, I think so.
So you're a big international guy. I mean, when Logan Massa won that U.S. Open that year down in Texas, I think all the years are so goofy, but 2019 or 2020, that's probably the best version of him I've ever seen wrestle. So, I mean, his upside's pretty high, right?
Yeah, I think he's got a ton of upside for, folk style. I mean, even with the international prowess that a lot of these guys have, like Mackay, being a world champion and things of that nature, like you got to have, your ability to go get takedowns. And I think, Massa is super talented on his feet. I think he can go get one whenever he needs one. So that adds itself to definitely that folk style grind.
He's also made a lot of fans. I think it was his freshman year or sophomore year when he beat Marinelli in the Big Tens and like literally flexed on the Iowa coaching staff. And so like if people are anti-Iowa, they are sort of pro Massa. So Mark, you actually do the work on this every week of taking these rankings, plugging them in, then you and I, doing the recalculations of literally a 60-second deal. So do you feel like Michigan it sounds weird, is the favorite to take third now?
Yes, but the funny thing about this doing team rankings, because tournaments so much different than duels, obviously. I sit there and I go through the head and I wrestle Michigan against Penn State, and I'm sure they're going to duel this year. Iowa does not wrestle Michigan. I wish they would have. But I could easily see Michigan winning 5 matches against Penn State. And there's a good chance they could win 6. So, in a duel, they may be better than Penn State. But in a tournament setting, I think Penn State's just got too many guys going into the finals. And their young guys seem to always really get better toward the end of the year, and they get them a few points here and there. So I still think there's a little gap between them and Penn State. And same thing with Iowa, because I don't think there's a gap between Penn State and Iowa. I think they're right there together. And when Penn State finds a 25-pounder, which we think may be the kid from Central Michigan from last year.
Yeah.
He's a top 6 kid, maybe 7th, but 6th for sure, probably. So there's a lot more team points, and that puts them ahead of Iowa. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is what we did. Mark, appreciate you. You and I did this the other day. So we broke these out into 4 pods and we pointed out matchups to look at and then the big duels. And most of the pods, there's 2 teams that are really good and 1 team that really probably isn't going to win either duel. So pod A or pod 1 is Northern Iowa, Cornell, Penn State. Northern Iowa against Cornell, the matches to look out for are Teskey against either Greg D or Vito. And at 84, Keckheisen, who I think both you guys picked to make the national finals against Jonathan Lowe. At 84, I'm sorry, at UNI Penn State, Teskey against maybe Hildebrandt, if he's available now, would be fascinating. And Keckheisen against Brooks, which we believe was the national semifinal last year. Yep. So those are just if you're watching this. And we need to go back and explain a couple things. This is not the national duels. They're not even allowed to use that name. Somebody posted that name belongs to the NWCA. That's the event that Grant Turner will be at in Louisville, if you're from there, say it the right way. January 6th and 7th, I believe, GT. You can tell me if I'm wrong about that, but that's what I saw, I think. And that's this year, it's the multi-divisional one, but that's the one that it's always been, whether it was Minnesota wrestling Oklahoma State and Stillwater, or back when it was in the Dome, and even the junior colleges got to wrestle alongside everybody else. And this is not also a national duels because teams chose who they're wrestling. Like Penn State and Iowa, so we're not wrestling each other. Like that was specifically said. The other thing that people need to know is this: in order to watch it, you have to have a Rockfin subscription, and it's Rockfin, it's not Rofkin. So people, please get that right. And the second part is this: you have to pay an additional $10 as a one-time pay-per-view. And talking to one of the creators there, they said that is going to be more of the trend, that you're going to have to pay the $10 a month and then pay additional fees. I don't want to get into what people's reaction are, but these schools have been promised a lot of money based on X number of subscriptions. It'll be interesting to see how many people subscribe to this, because you have to have a subscription now and you have to pay the extra $10. So that's just the business side of it. I'm a dork. So here's the potential matchups for Cornell against Penn State. So Greg D or Vito against whoever at 25, then RBY. Hanlovic or Saunders versus Nick Lee. Yanni versus Bartlett. Yapulian or Ramirez would be favored. Starachi Folka could be an interesting match. Lowe Brooks, Darmstead Cardenas against Dean, and Fernandez against Kirkfleet. The way, Mark, you and I looked at it, we think Penn State's favored in 6 out of the 10 matches. GT, can you see, without a major upset, Cornell winning 5 matches here?
Yeah, but I do think that there are potential for upsets.
Yeah, I think 97 and heavy are both, ones that could probably, if those kids wrestle really well, could make some noise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we think Penn State will come out of this pool, which then we're going to talk about in a minute. So pool 2 is Central Michigan, Lehigh, and Iowa. I think we all think Iowa's going to win this pool. Just some things to point out. Dresden Simon and Stencil are really the 2 hammers for Central Michigan. Stencil will wrestle Wood and Cassiope, so that's a good day at the office. Simon will wrestle Ironman, who he's wrestled before at Nationals. And then Lehigh, Lane would wrestle either Lee or Ibarra. Humphreys, I spelled his name wrong, will wrestle Caleb Young, and Wood will wrestle Cassiope. I think in that pool, you're really just looking for individual matchups. You're not, if Iowa lost one of those 2 teams, be the craziest upset ever. So we'll keep it moving. Hofstra, Virginia Tech, Arizona State. Hofstra doesn't have anybody ranked inside of the top 15. So we just put X's here where guys aren't really ranked. So what's interesting is Valencia and Norfleet would be favored. Lewis and Bolin would be favored. And then you have 6 matchups that kind of, Teamer's a big favorite, I think, over Brady. But the rest of those 5 could kind of go either way. I mean, Schultz will be a favorite. Courtney will be a favorite. Myers will be a favorite. Vasquez is a favorite. Parco is a favorite. My favorite match to watch out of that would be Parco Andoni, and just who goes, like, I think who goes to their back 3 times, because those kids go for it. So, Mark, I put down 7-3 here. Tell me the path of victory for Virginia Tech to get to 5 wins.
Well, I think Andonian has to win without a doubt. I think they need to get bonus points out of Lewis and Bolin, which I could possibly see that happening. I mean, they need to win 33 and they need to be competitive at 25. If Latona wrestles like he used to wrestle, and I know it's a weight issue, and I don't know if he's got that under control yet, he's every bit as good as Courtney, in my opinion. I think he is. So, he was seeded number 2 at nationals last year, if I'm not mistaken. So, I'm not the only one that thought that. So they're going to have to wrestle above what they have lately. I think Traxler and Schultz is going to be a really good match to watch also. I really do.
Yeah. GT, I just had Cody Brewer on the podcast right after they thumped UNI and then beat Missouri at Mizzou. So they're a team that didn't have a great nationals last year. I think a lot of it had to do just the morale of the team with, Mackay wrestling with one arm. So, I mean, this is a team that has some pretty high upside with like Myers, Andonian, Lewis, Bolin, and I think Traxler. They got 5 guys that can podium and they have a national champion. This is an interesting team, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mackay going up to 174, I mean, Hunter Bolin is a beast. Latona was the 2 seed last year. Myers is, I think he got 3rd or 4th. Andonian, I believe, was on the podium last year. Also a world team member. They could make some noise. I mean, those guys are, once again, in the ACC. So I think they'll be able to get a lot of guys to nationals and get them to the show. So I think that will help them with giving them extra chances to, score some points.
Their strength of schedule is really good. That ACC is a really good conference. And it's not deep just because of the number of teams, but the quality at the top is really good. Okay, so Binghamton, North Carolina State, Mizzou. Binghamton, the only guy ranked is Louis Dupre. He'll have Elam and Trumbull in some order, so that's good for him. This, to me, is probably the most fascinating duel of the first round. So we have this at 5-4-1, and the toss-up's at 133 because we don't know if Arini or Tremblay is going to wrestle. We don't know if Crawford or Matt Schmidt's going to wrestle. But we had Camacho as the favorite at 25. Hart's the favorite at 41. Wilson's the favorite at 49. Jake Hughes is the favorite at 57. O'Toole at 65. Hidley 74. Hidley 84. Elam 97. And Elam heavyweight. And this would probably be Wilson down here, who's not bad at all. So if Crawford wrestles, he would be the underdog and would be 5-5. But there's a bunch of these matches that feel like they could flip. Like Ed Scott, Jake Hughes, Josh Edmond, Tariq Wilson. Tariq would be a big favorite, but Josh probably gonna put him on his back one time. Kevin Jack Hart. Jack's really talented. And Noah Certain just pinned freaking Latona last weekend. So, I mean, and Latona's beating Camacho. I know that the ABP, BBC thing doesn't always work, but there's a lot of matches here. GT, you and I, we watched like the Minnesota-Oklahoma State duel together. To me, this is the best duel of the first round. I mean, are you pretty excited to check this one out?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of Mizzou, and I mean, I think I have them picked to like sneak up there and get a team trophy from early in the season. I just think that they got some firepower when those guys are hitting on all cylinders. Like Hart is, he can be really good. I think all these guys can be pretty talented. But I definitely like NC State's team this year. I definitely like how, Hidley's up at 74. I know the other Hidley at 84 he's a monster. So I like the dual format between these two teams, but I also think that these guys have very good tournament prowess to be in that, top 10 area for both teams.
Yeah. So Mark, you and I put this together 5-4-1, and we just blew through it real quick, like what we just did. So
Yep.
I'll put you on the spot. Who wins the duel?
Oh, boy, that's toughy. I'm going to say with the lineups that I see right now, I think North Carolina State wins the duel. I think they're too solid. I don't see a lot of bonus points going on either side. I think O'Toole definitely is probably the one guy you look at to score bonus points. Even Elam, as good as he is, Trumbull had some huge wins last year. He's hard to wrestle. He's kind of funky.
And Bullard's really good. Like we shouldn't.
And I think Wilson's as good as Elam. I mean, from what I saw last year, if he's back in the lineup and he's wrestling, I would say he's probably a slight favorite over Elam. So
he's not ranked as high, but it could be a 4-4-2 duel now with 2 toss-ups. Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a great duel. I just like to know, who everybody's bringing. And so I don't know if Spencer's going to wrestle, obviously.
We'll get to that. I'm just talking about North Carolina State, Missouri right now. So I'm going to pick Missouri because I want to be able to walk around St. Louis and not get yelled at. So, all right. So this would put Penn State against Virginia Tech or Arizona State. So again, we put these matchups together. Virginia Tech feels like they would match up. We have them favored in 3 matches, underdogs at 5 matches and 2 toss-ups. The toss-ups are at 65 and 74. If that duel happens, Starachi Lewis is going to be awesome. Bartlett Andonian would probably be awesome. And Brooks Bolin will probably be really controlled, but a good match. Arizona State matches up a little bit better. We got them winning 4 matches and 1 toss-up. The toss-up's at heavyweight. At least that's where I put it, where Kirkfleet and Schultz are ranked right next to each other. So I was at the duel where Arizona State beat Penn State a couple years ago. It feels like if they can get by VT, which is no small task, they could actually get this done. Feels like Courtney could win, Parco could win, Teamer could win, Valencia could win, Schultz wins. They probably need to win 6 matches because there's going to be bonus at 74 and 84. So they probably need Norfleet to beat Dean. Would you guys agree that that's their path to victory?
I think Lewis needs to win if they plan on winning it. That's
no, we're talking about Arizona.
Yeah, I would say Northfleet is Schultz and Northfleet both need to win for them to win the duel. Yeah. That's what I see.
GT, if you look at either duel, what are some of the matchups that you're really looking forward to? Forget the team aspect for a second.
I think, the 49-pound weight class with Bartlett, Andonian, and Parco. I think that's a pretty electric weight class to watch these 3.
2 world team members, right? 2 age group world team members there.
Yep. I think also I like 133. Multiple time like firepower there. National champion, All-American type guys. I definitely like the heavyweight weight class. But on the Arizona State Penn State duel, there's some bonus point potential, either on both sides, right? We talked about a little bit of a 74-84 for Penn State, but I think Teamer, Valencia, and potentially even like Colton Schultz,
Courtney too.
And Courtney.
If I'm sorry, not about Penn State doesn't have anybody that's wrestling. If they don't have Hildebrand, Courtney can bonus, right?
Yeah. This could go down to like a, whatever it is. They still could be 4-5 or 5-5 or 4-6 and still be able to beat them by just bonus points. Now, either way, Penn State could lose a couple of matches that they were not supposed to and still be able to be just fine.
Yeah. Bartlett and Andonian were on the same world team together. Is that correct? Like one weight class apart this summer? like that U23 team.
I don't know that for sure,
but they
I
were
know they're
both on a world team. Maybe
Yeah.
one was U20 and you was U23, but and what's interesting is they're both world team guys and they're both the underdog against Parco. So that tells you how good that weight is. So if you scroll down here, this is the last one. Iowa matches up super well in dual meets against Mizzou or NC State. We have NC State favored at 25 and 84. And then I guess I guess is we don't know if Kemmerer is not wrestling, then they're definitely favored at 74 too. And then, you know, I just don't know where else they're going to get wins. I mean,
Well, 49, I think Wilson will be favored.
Oh yeah,
over Mirikitani.
Wilson's the other favorite. I'm sorry, Wilson's the other favorite. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just going to be tough for them to get to 5 wins, and you really have to get to 5 wins to win these duels when they've got some bonus guys. Bullard is an interesting guy. He's really good at slowing people down. He's really good at passing ankles, and putting people in scrambles they don't like. So I feel like he could potentially, and he rides pretty hard. Marinelli, nobody rides Marinelli, but he kept Wick once in a while. But that's an interesting duel. So
I'm pretty sure though, David, last year at the Nationals, I think Marinelli beat Bullard in the round of 16, and I think it was by fairly handily. If it wasn't a major, it was real close to being a major. So
he's probably, if we set the line, it's probably -6, right? Somewhere in there. I'm just saying he's the kind of guy that could pass an ankle, come out the back at the end of a period, and it'd be 2-0 and not even 2-1. And now all of a sudden it's an interesting match because he rides pretty well. He can shorten the match. Yeah. So GT, you mentioned you're a Mizzou fan. I am too. I'm trying to figure out 5 wins for Mizzou. If Ibarra wrestles, I think Certain gets it done. I think for them to have a chance, Josh Edmond has to upset Murin. O'Toole needs to beat Marinelli, and we'll talk about the impact of that match. Jeremiah Kent needs to win. Rocky Elam needs to win. That's 5. Do you see anywhere else where they can win? And you know, like, I don't. I just feel like Ironman's too good. DeSanto's too good. I think Mako could go with Brands if Kemmerer's not wrestling, though. So maybe they could win 6 matches. I don't know. Am I crazy?
I mean, it's hard to see exactly how this would like shake out. I mean, you know, Carter Young has been basically, you know, he up and down a little bit. You know, like he's had good matches. He's had some suspect losses. That could be another place that Mizzou could maybe sneak a win. But yeah, definitely at 74, 84, depending upon who wrestles who, could be a couple of different ways that could be sliced up.
Yeah, I mean, the best case for Mizzou is Mako beats Brands and Kent beats Wilson. And then Elam beats Warner and O'Toole beats Marinelli. And now that's 4. And if Ibarra doesn't wrestle, or if Ibarra wrestles, that's 5. So, I mean, maybe this duel is a lot closer than I think it is. You know, it's fascinating because Mizzou could go from losing to Virginia Tech to potentially beating Iowa. But, you know, we went through this a week ago off the air, how maybe Iowa State could get 5 matches and then it wasn't close at all. And even younger Bastido won and it still really wasn't close. So these are fascinating duels. I think what this is a really good event is it's very hard to explain team scoring. And this is one of my biggest gripes about wrestling. We got 9 different ways we keep team score. And you guys know this. An 8-team tournament is scored one way. A 16-team tournament is scored another way. A 32-team tournament is scored another way. Sometimes they'll wrestle like the Stampede this weekend where you wrestle in these pools, or at least historically, where you get a pin is worth 6. In the Nationals, a pin is worth 3 or 2.5, which sounds crazy. And then at the Nationals, like if you win in the quarters, it's 7 points, 1 + 6 + bonus. Duels are a lot simpler to figure out. They're a lot easier for fans to understand. And if you're a fan of any of these 12 schools, it's a hell of a lot easier to watch your team because you can just watch one mat. It's not ADD. So, Mark, you've been around this a long time. How important do you think it is for people and organizations to continue to highlight dual meets?
I think it's really important. I mean, I think fans love the dual meet setting. They love watching team against team, trying to figure out who's going to get bonus points, trying to figure out, like you're figuring out maybe Missouri wins 5 matches, and that could possibly happen. But now all of a sudden, Iowa's going to win probably 2, maybe 3 with bonus points. And if they win 5 and they get 3 bonus points, how is Missouri going to find 3 guys to get bonus points in those other matches? That's going to be hard to do. So that's the fun part about duels. Tournaments, somebody gets beat out by a guy from another team that you didn't see happening, and all of a sudden they lose a whole lot of points. And then the guy you thought he might be able to go with from the other team turns around and, is still winning on the winner side and getting more points. So I love the duel, the way it's set up, and I hate to see that ever go away. But the individual national tournament, I don't think should ever change. I love the 32, 33 man bracket, and the best man's the national champ. I think that's the way it should always be.
Yeah. So GT, you're coaching actively, and this is a statement that I've said, and I'm curious if you agree with it. I think in tournaments, your best athletes win it for you. And I think in dual meets, your worst athletes win it for you. Like if you're way better than me, but I can keep it to a 7-point match, where then another hammer on our team pins a guy, and Mark made a good point about if a guy loses, but the thing about if a guy loses at a tournament is he can come through the backside and pin 4 guys and take third and still score a truckload of points. If you lose in a duel, you just scored 0. So as a guy that's doing this and probably going through some math when you guys duel some of the better teams you're going to go against, what are your thoughts on duels versus tournaments?
Well, I think, the team versus team aspect is great for television. I think it's great for the fan base. You get the alumni invested into, a Bedlam or, Penn State versus Ohio State. And you just get a lot of people to show up for those type of things. I think the dual meet format has a very, very large place in collegiate wrestling. I think it's a very, very, it's based off of matchups, right? So you can have a lot of fun, hey, this matchup, how does the duel play out? Upsets, all of a sudden one team beats another. I think the traditional style tournament is the best thing for collegiate wrestling, way more than duels, because people from maybe a non-Power 5 conference or a traditional powerhouse basically can put their entire community on their back and go win a title. There's multiple guys that maybe from a Cal Poly, Kent State, Central Michigan that have won titles. Right, Stanford, maybe Stanford does not have the ability to ever win a national dual team title, but they can put some guys in the finals and they can win some individual national titles and put their program on the map a little bit. And then all of a sudden you get some guys that come from places that, they're not going to win team dual meets or that much because, the discrepancy in talent is just so crazy. Or it's really hard to get guys to smaller institutions at the Division I level, and you're competing against Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, these $1 million, budgetings, and then the other guys are, taking short school buses and vans to everything.
Hey, so I think easy on how we traveled in junior college.
Yeah. So I think that the dual meet format is amazing. I think it is very, very marketable. I think it's great for us to discuss, matchups and potential there. But to Mark's point, the NCAA wrestling tournament that's going to be happening in Detroit, 33-man bracket. I mean, it's one of the best, it's the largest viewed, it's one of the largest tournaments in the world for the sport of wrestling. That needs to continue.
Yeah, I echo what you guys are saying about the the 33, about the tournament and the buildup. I was talking to somebody this morning about a fantasy contest and stuff like that. Here's where I think, and I don't know the fix to this, but I think it's great about dual meets. It's like, so for example, this event is next week, right? We can talk about possible matchups, right? At nationals, the national qualifiers are on some version of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tuesday, the wild cards are announced. Wednesday, the brackets are announced, right? I mean, we all watch this. Mark, you and I for years, like we're on a phone call watching together as the brackets come up. Then the following 8 days later, Thursday, the tournament starts. But it's like, hey, David might wrestle Grant in the quarterfinals. They're the 6 and the 3 seeds. But you can't do a whole feature on that because one of them could lose. Where in a dual meet, like the most anticipated dual meet of the year is Penn State, Iowa, right? We know that Max Dean is most likely wrestling Jacob Warner. We know Cassiope is wrestling Kirkfleet. You can go through like Marinelli's going to wrestle whoever. If, DeSanto is going to wrestle RBY again. And I never thought about storylines or marketing when I was a coach. And I just don't think you do. Like the storyline should be, Grant's a perfect example. Last year, the storyline at the NAI Nationals was intriguing because it was so close. The coach at the other school had wrestled for Grandview, this whole thing. Grant doesn't want a storyline. Grant wants it locked up like it was a couple years ago after the semifinals or going into the semifinals. That's what he wants. He wants it just to be an absolute beatdown. But if you're not in it, right? I might wish for that because I'm Grant's friend, but if you're just a fan, you're like, man, this is awesome. Like JUCOs last year went into the finals. One year in the JUCOs, 3 different teams held the lead in 10 matches in the finals. That's where wrestling's got a problem because they can't build these things up. Like because of the nature of a tournament, you can't, like, the quarterfinals get done at nationals in the morning session on Friday morning. Friday's the semis. Who can put out a bunch of stuff on it in 6 hours, 4 hours? There's not enough time. So I don't know the solution to that. We all wrestled. We were all pretty good at wrestling. The things that we're the most proud of is a tournament we won, not some dual meet we won as an athlete. But dual meet's got a lot of positives to them in terms of marketing for sure. And, I will close with this because it's sort of tied to this and we can pick it up next week because it'll be a pretty slow week next week. I talked to Chris Perry. He said, wrestling's coming to Oklahoma State. He said, can't give you a date, but it's going to be sooner rather than later. And, we were talking about the cool relationship between Oklahoma State and Iowa. They both want to beat each other's brains out, but they'll both come together to do what's better for wrestling, like the meet at Kinnick, the meet coming up at Globe Life Field, and combining with USA Wrestling, who were obviously on their network. GT, you're intricately involved with USA Wrestling with Nike. But USA Iran, or Iran, depending on how you say it, and Oklahoma State hosting Iowa, that's an awesome thing, which we will do a deep dive that week. But we got about 2 minutes left. Mark, your 2 picks are Iowa and Penn State to win the overall?
Yes.
GT, you got anybody different? You picking Missouri? You want to be popular here in Missouri?
No.
All right. For my brothers, Mark.
David, who are you picking?
I'll pick Missouri.
Missouri and who?
Penn State. I'll pick Penn State. I'll pick Missouri and Arizona State.
Yeah,
I will pick, so I can just
Arizona State. Okay.
I will just be completely wrong. So, all right. For Mark and Grant, I'm David. We appreciate you guys watching and listening and all the feedback. God bless. Have a great day.